to the Commish Radio Show.
What you do, man? You cut Dion off like that, man?
Oh, nah, that was just something short and sweet.
You play Dion again, man. You know you gotta get Dion in there, man.
I got you.
Go ahead.
This is Dion, and you're listening to the Commish Radio Show.
All right, you still cut her short though, man. I know she said something other than that, man. Something like, she loved you or something like that, because you always got this crush on Dion. Speaking of getting crushes on things, speaking about getting crushes on things, what we're doing here is now we're crushing very loudly on Dallas history and remembering Black Dallas. You have two tours right now. You have the North Dallas tour that you talked about earlier. Now tell us about the South Dallas tour.
Okay, I actually have three tours. Three.
Okay.
I'll start with the South Dallas tour. The South Dallas tour that I do, which I'm doing one publicly for the public, the first Saturday in March, and that's a part of our Mabel Challenge Scholarship Fund. We have a scholarship for 2 students. We give a $2,000 scholarships for a graduating student from Lincoln High School, and we've taken that project over from the Mabel Chandler Foundation. And Mabel Chandler actually funded over 80 students, she and her husband, out of her pocket. Well, her class of 54, I believe, decided that they would put a scholarship in her honor. So this is how that started. And so the proceeds from this tour is I call out Mabel Chandler Scholarship Fund. And that tour will be of South Dallas. It will tour the home of Dr. Ward, not the home, but the area where Dr. Ward, Ray Charles lived, and different parts of civil rights leaders in that area. Also to pick up some of North Dallas, or Uptown as we now call it, and also of the Fair Park area, of course, and the Freedman Cemetery, and then downtown, where we once had an African American hospital that many people don't know about.
What was it?
On Commerce Street, and it was the Blewett Sanitarium,
Okay.
and that's near downtown. We will be also touring. Of course, we always go by the Juanita Craft House, even though it's not operating right now, but we still will recognize that because she was one of the most prominent civil rights leaders during the 50s, and so we certainly add that to our tour. So it's more like a civil rights tour, and make people aware of the different locations that are in the South Dallas area.
Now, the last time that I was with you, we went on the South Dallas tour. We went to the Juanita Craft home. Pardon me. You say it's not operational now. What's
Well, they had a water leak. The sprinkling system, it destroyed the inside of the house, and so therefore we're there working on restoring the house.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a major project. They hope to reopen it in about 2 more years, and so they're
2 more years.
It'll be 2 years. They're going to bring it up to museum quality and also preservation quality to make the house. It was destroyed, and it was already in need of repair. So they're going to do some major overhaul, but also they're needing funding for that, and so they're raising money, and the city is kicking in some money as well. So
how can we do something to contribute?
Anybody can contribute to the Juanita Craft Foundation. And they can just contact the city, or the Juanita Craft has their own foundation as well, and donate to it that way as well.
Okay. And I understand that the Juanita Craft Foundation, they have I believe they have a Twitter page as well, so I'll reach out to them.
Right.
The Juanita Craft home is very important because of the fact that she and A. Maceo Smith, they were 2 of the most prominent people, folks, who helped desegregate Texas.
Right. Exactly.
I believe Juanita Craft, Miss Craft, who I met many years ago when I was a kid at Law Magnet High School, and when she first got elected to serve on the city council, she was instrumental in the founding over 150 NAACP chapters.
Exactly right. She was, and she also, I would imagine, that's the only house that the president actually came to. LBJ wanted her to come to the White House, and she told him, "No, you come to my house." And they discussed issues dealing with civil rights. So she was a very powerful woman at her time.
So that should have a historical marker out there already.
It has a historical marker.
It does?
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay.
From the state of Texas.
From the state of Texas. We
Exactly.
need to make a larger marker. A larger marker than that.
Right.
Indeed. So Juanita Craft, and I also understand that there's a hotel that's coming up now that was named after what?
Pittman. Is that the one you're referring to? William Sidney Pittman, the hotel that's on Elm Street. They, for past 20 years, they wanted to demolish that hotel. It was
Pythian Temple.
The Pythian Temple. But actually, it's the only non-religious building that we have from William Sidney Pittman in Dallas. And many of his works are all across Texas. He's one of the major first leading architects in the state of Texas or anywhere, because they really didn't have many during that time. And most architects, they were delegated to designing churches because there were enough black people to purchase or hire him to build a church. But as far as individual homes, most black people did not do that. And then, of course, the whites would not hire a black architect. So most of his buildings and designs were like YMCAs and churches and major buildings, and maybe even some libraries upstate. But he has buildings all across, even in Waxahachie, the Joshua Chapel, and also he has several upstate and northeast institute, a school institute there. But this particular building, the Pittman Temple, after we call it the Pittman or Pythia's Temple, and it's going to be restored to its mint condition, to the condition it was, and they are working on it, and it should open, and they are naming the hotel after him, the Pittman Hotel. It'll be like a small boutique hotel, and it's right there on the corner of Elm, right by Central Freeway.
All right. Folks, now, William Sidney Pittman, tell us about him, who he was. I know who he is, but I want him to
Well, he was a major leading architect during the time in the early 1900s. He came here from Washington, I believe. He and his wife was an outstanding pianist. She also taught at Booker T. Washington. She was the daughter of Booker T. Washington. Her name was Portia Pittman, and she taught there, and she also was quite outstanding in her own right. She was a concert pianist. She had performed in Germany and all over Europe because she was just that good. And so she, as a part of her, and they had one child, I think, while they were here, and of course they separated. But as far as William Sidney Pittman, he lived right off of Ross, once again in that same little area by Ross and Central, and he designed many buildings, and then he came up with a publication called the Brotherhood Eyes. And it's a rare publication. There's not very many left, and I'm fortunate to have one.
You have one of those?
I have a copy.
So that was sort of like the National Enquirer.
Yes, it was
but
like
on a Dallas level,
right.
Or black level.
A gossip paper, but it was true gossip. And so, but anyway, his paper, he became angry with the ministers because they started using white designers, and they did that because his behavior had become very erratic. For whatever reason, then they stopped using him and they shunned him, and so he started a paper and he started giving the gossip, not only in Dallas but even down in Houston, all of the small country towns. He would have people to send in information about what was going on within the church, and therefore it was accurate information, and it was pretty much kind of taboo information that people didn't want out. The preachers did not want it, and that was the first time that the preachers in Dallas raised over $3,000 to try to get rid of him. And they got him.
The black preachers raised $3,000
to try to stop his publication.
And this was in 19 what?
I would say 30s or 40s.
1930s and 40s, during the Depression time.
Right,
They raised $3,000
to get rid of this publication.
To get this Negro out of town.
Right, but finally...
I didn't say the N-word. I said Negro. I don't want y'all... No, I didn't say that.
Well, finally he had sent some information to someone in Houston, and they saw that as transporting illegal information or contraband, or somehow it was a federal offense, and he ended up going to jail in Kansas. I can't call the name of it, but
Leavenworth.
Leavenworth. He went to Leavenworth and served some years there. But fortunately, his wife, who they had separated at the time, knew Eleanor Roosevelt. And Eleanor Roosevelt's maid, and she called Eleanor Roosevelt's maid, and that maid told the the president's wife, and somehow he was to serve 5 years, but he got out after 3 years, and he was to never do any other publication, and so he kind of
Now that's a hookup.
he
Doc.
yeah, that
You know,
was
because
a-
see, so let's see, that's like the help. You know,
Mhm.
one maid talking to another
Right.
maid, and then the other maid tell the lady that they work for, who
Right.
they're keeping house for. That's
Right.
what my grandmother used to do. So
Right.
keeping
Mhm.
house. So you know, that's what happened.
That's
Say
what
that.
happened. Otherwise, he would have served the full 5 years. But I think he got out in 2.5 to 3 years. But he came back pretty much poor, and he didn't make any more money at that time. He was not to write anymore, and so by that time, the people who solicited to his paper, they kind of kept him up until he passed away.
But he moved back to Dallas.
He moved back to Dallas and stayed in a hotel right there off of Paul Street, and then until his death.
And this was Booker T. Washington's family, basically in-laws.
He was the in-law, but his wife had divorced him by then. Even when she called the president, they had been divorced, but she wanted to try to help him.
Okay. How do you get all this knowledge?
A lot of reading, a lot of sources, a lot of people, mostly from reading. The books are out there. I mean, the history is out there. It's in the newspapers. It's in the older newspapers, and there are some publications. And so the history is out there. It's just a matter of putting it all together.
Now, on a personal level, and I'm going to be speaking in February 28th, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to recall the name of the college because you got me thrown off using these new acronyms of colleges and everything. But I'll be speaking regarding Texas sports and integration of Texas sports. Do you have any information on that?
Very little. It's out there, but my study on that has been very, very little. But is there something in particular that you're thinking of?
I'm speaking in particular the Dallas Texans. Now there's two Dallas Texans. The Dallas Texans that Abner Haynes played for, which was in the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the Dallas Texans that had Buddy Young that played in the 1950s. And I did some research on it, and there was a point in time where the Negro Chamber of Commerce was pleading with the Dallas Texans to integrate, instead of black people being in the end zone alone, that they could be in the other seats.
Well, what little I know, I did some research with Sam Wicks. He was working on a publication with baseball players strictly, and they had their own Negro League.
Right.
And I forgot the name of what they were called, but he did a lot of research on that, and I worked with him. But that's probably the most extent to my knowledge with the sports scene. But they did have their own Negro leagues, but they did not necessarily integrate or play with the white teams. So that's kind of how it was. It was still segregated like the city was, pretty much segregated in most all that they did during the earlier years.
And when did you think that the city became officially desegregated?
Officially,
Yeah, officially. I mean, you know, hey, being real. Like, example.
about 3 years ago.
Oh, see, I knew that was a set-up question.
Yeah.
See, like, you know, H.L. Greens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling both our age here. H.L. Greens, you know, we used to go downtown H.L. Greens, and they had a kitchen downstairs and a kitchen upstairs.
In the basement, they had
Right.
blacks could go to the counter in the basement, right?
Right, yeah.
But not
I
upstairs.
thought it was cool to go down in the basement until I realized that what that meant. You know,
Mhm.
I talked to someone as I was going downstairs, and then he said, you know, this is what you say about black people go down in the basement.
Well,
I said, wow.
well, not only for that, even in the department stores, they would have to go in the basements to do the shopping for the returns. They could buy those, or they could buy irregular clothes in the basement. So that was where they would delegate it to. But a lot of civil rights leaders, they really fought for women to be able to try on clothes in the regular department stores. And people like Neiman and Marcus, they were really Stanley Marcus. He was really active in trying to desegregate, but he had to do it, you know, quietly. He couldn't go out, but he supported it. But a lot of the stores were segregated, and they couldn't. And the women, and they decided one day. I think it came to a point where they boycotted the stores where they wouldn't shop on, I think it was like Easter. They just refused to buy any clothes, and I think at that point they finally, and that was in the late '60s, that they, well, mid to late '60s, that they decided that they were going to end segregation and shopping in the stores through protests of all the women not buying clothes at Easter time.
And that was in the late 60s?
I would say mid 60s, right?
Okay, mid 60s. Okay, mid 60s, and that was after Birmingham had their Easter protest, which was the Birmingham where they put the water hoses on people, and that because that came out of Easter as well.
Really? I didn't know it was Easter time. I knew about it, but not around Easter. But they decided I don't know what year, but they decided they were not going to shop, and I think it hurt the business until they decided they're going to have to change their ways.
And just talking to you, Dr. Keaton, just talking to you regarding something you just mentioned, you mentioned irregular clothes. So that means that when people were able to try on clothes and that means we put a lot of seamsters out of business.
Right. Most definitely. Most definitely.
Like Rosa Parks, that's how she made her money. She made her money when she went to work, and then obviously when she came home, she obviously did the same thing. Wow, that's incredible.
But there were people like Juanita Craft who, she trained children. There are a lot of craft kids, and she trains children to sew, to cook, to can, to garden. She wanted them to be self-sufficient. So I couldn't say that them being able to go buy clothes, it probably did put some out of business, but a lot of people at that time, they made their own clothes, and they probably just continued, those who could. But it was good that they would now have the option to go and buy if they wanted to.
I remember my mother made, just like you said, we had a event at school, and she made, they gave everyone the pattern to take home to give to the mother, and the mother would go ahead and buy it from the store and everything, and she made my costume, so to speak. I went to school at William Brown Miller.
Okay.
Yeah. Could you tell us about William Brown Miller?
I don't know much about William Brown Miller. Other than
the plantation?
I know about the Miller plantation.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
okay. Well, there was a Miller plantation right there across from Good Street, where that property was. That house was moved to Old Cities Park. Is that the area you're talking about? Okay. Well, the Miller plantation, it was there, but they moved the house, and then that's where Good Street is now, I believe. Is it Good Street? Okay, that's where their church is. But he owned quite a number of slaves, and that particular area was where his farm was, and it went quite a ways going west from there. So that's pretty much the Miller plantation. He was a large slave owner here in Dallas, and a lot of those people settled in what we now call the bottom. They went to the bottom after emancipation, which was 1865 in Texas, as we know, not the real date, but a lot of them moved into that area, and that's how we ended up with our first, not our first, I hate to say first, because they all settled at the same time, but that was one of the early freedmen towns, and so a lot of those people came from the Miller plantation and settled in the 8th Street, 10th Street area, and what we call the bottom now. And so many of them were from that plantation.
I went to school at William Brown Miller Elementary School, which, from what my understanding is, like you just said, it was on the plantation. So I really went to school on the grounds of an old plantation.
Exactly.
Didn't know anything about that until one day I was at school, and one of the teachers said that the plantation house was around the corner, and they were talking about moving it to Old City Park. When I went to school there, the plantation house was still there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I went to school in 1967, so they still had the plantation house there.
Wow.
So, yeah, exactly.
Wow. So
so history is relatively new.
Right.
In a way, and that's the reason why we're on the Commish Radio Show, so other people can realize that it's interconnected. This deal that you told us earlier about Alpha Road, Alpha, Texas, Inwood, Texas. We had talked earlier part of the week, and then we're going to go to a break, and then we'll close out. We had talked earlier this week about name of communities, and you mentioned earlier Little Egypt. Deep Elm? And could you give us in the name of it? It's Deep Elm, and what's the other one?
Elm Thicket?
Yeah.
Elm Thicket and Deep Elm. Well, of course, most people know that Elm Thicket is out by Love Field. Some people call it North Dallas or Elm Thicket. And, of course, the origin of its name, or both names, has to do with the trees. The elms were thick in Deep Elm, and therefore they call it Deep Elm. And also elm, there were lots of elm trees in the area, so they call that elm. The real name, of course, is elm, but we have a way of creating a word out of a word, and now we call it elm, and it's still called elm today, just like Elm Thicket is also still called that by people who know it as that, and that's where you know that someone is a real native of Dallas if they say Elm Thicket, because that was the community, but now it has another name, and it's not just like Uptown is. Some people may not know that was really North Dallas, or Short North Dallas, or Lower North Dallas. It had those names in the past, and they've just kind of evolved and changed.
Okay. When we come back, we're gonna do a close, and then I want you to talk to us about the Freedman Cemetery.
Okay,
All right?
sure.
All right. Commish Radio Show. We will be right back after this break.
Hey everybody, it's Casey Fox, the Lady General, and I consistently listen to the Commish Radio Show, the latest in politics and entertainment.